This week on Life and Faith.
1 month into sort of joining IJM, we had a farewell for one of our offices closing down, Chiang Mai in Thailand. It was a bit mixed emotions. I thought, why are we closing the office down? But they'd been there 20 years, and in the time they were there, sex trafficking of young children disappeared. They'd done the job. Local authorities had it under hand. So that sense of, you know what, big problem, but something can be done about it. And right now in Chiang Mai, we don't need to be there.
You couldn't have paid me $1 million a year to do something different.
Why does consciousness exist in the first place?
Forgiveness and reconciliation takes strength.
It was a bit of a culture shock when I hit Sydney.
We hope the truth will out.
Welcome to Life and Faith from CPX. I'm Simon Smart. Well, Mike and Steve Baird grew up as sons of prominent Australian politician Bruce Baird. Both recently had major career changes, moving from corporate roles to the not-for-profit and charity sector. Steve Baird worked in different corporations, including most recently being head of marketing at Velocity, Virgin Australia's frequent flyer program. He's now CEO of International Justice Mission Australia. International Justice Mission is the world's largest anti-slavery organisation, with 21 offices across all continents. IJM partners with local law enforcement to rescue and restore victims, hold perpetrators accountable, and help transform broken public justice systems in the developing world. We've talked about IJM before on Life and Faith. They do amazing work. Mike Baird had a successful career in banking before going into politics, eventually becoming the 44th Premier of New South Wales. He returned to banking after 10 years in politics to be Chief Customer Officer in charge of corporate and institutional banking and then retail banking at National Australia Bank. Mike recently took on the role of CEO of HammondCare, which is a large Christian charity that provides dementia and aged care along with palliative care. Their mission is to improve the quality of life for people in need. So today on Life and Faith, we talk to the brothers and hear something of their story, what has motivated them, the people who have influenced them most, and what it was like growing up together. This episode was a bit different for me. These guys are really good friends of mine, and so I thought it would be fun to share some of their story with Life and Faith listeners. Mike and Steve Baird, good to see you guys. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure, Smarty.
Thanks, Simon.
Now, look, you've both made this fairly recent move from the corporate world to the NGO world, the not-for-profit world, if you like, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Steve, I want to ask you first of all, what was it like growing up having Mike as an older brother? What was he like to grow up with? I know he's a bit older than you, right?
Yeah, he's got nearly 10 years on me, so I was well and truly the youngest. But look, a distinct advantage was he was a pretty fast bowler by comparison, so
Okay.
my backyard cricket skills got sharp from a young age. But no, there was quite a gap between Mike and Julie, my older sister, 8 years older than I, and I always looked up to Mike and Julie.
Yeah. And did he take pleasure in smashing you in the backyard in cricket?
Oh, I'd say it was pretty evenly matched, Simon.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. What about Steve? Mike, what's your memory of him as a young fella?
Steve is always someone who was very caring. He was just kind of a joy to have around. I can't remember. I mean, most people will kind of reflect on siblings, and it'll be on the challenges. I mean, there's obviously good times, but they'll be quite prominent. But with Steve, there's none of those. It was. I remember when Dad came down from the hospital and said, we've had a boy, and I, fell out of the car with the excitement that I was going to have a young brother, and I haven't looked back since. So there's been an age gap, but Steve and I have done a lot of things together, and it's always been a real treat.
Yeah. Well, look, you both did come from a sort of prominent family. Your dad, Bruce, was a state and then federal politician. He was the Olympics minister. He's been on Life and Faith, by the way. And the family lived in Germany and the US. Steve, you weren't tempted to go into politics like your dad, I don't think, but I wonder, how would you describe the way that upbringing shaped you?
Yeah, I think through it all, what we always learned was look out for the underdog, and I think that's what we got from Mum and Dad. I mean, Dad in more public ways, and how can we do that in government, and Mum in less public ways, and the work she did in prisons and counselling. But there was always a stream in the family of how can we help those who need help.
Yeah. Was that something you picked up there too, Mike?
Yeah, I think, what Dad showed us is that when you put your mind to something, you can achieve anything, I think. I mean, the concept of the Olympics came to our dining room table, and, Dad said, Nick Reiner's spoken to me, and we're thinking about bidding for the Olympics. What do you think? And I can hardly, again, I jumped up with the excitement of the thought, and to see the role he played in that, I mean, that's unbelievable. But at the same time, he stood up for the refugees in a way that was very significant for every refugee in the country, and the public debate. And to Steve's point, that was the right thing to do, looking after someone and giving voice to someone that couldn't. And, Mum's whole life was about that. She really showed us that actually other people matter more. And, while we're here, we've got an opportunity, to serve and look after them. So, that package was probably pretty powerful.
Yeah. Now, you did follow your dad down that path into politics after being in banking. What was it that sort of pushed you in that direction? What took you down that path?
Well, look, I think, for a long time I looked at it and thought, well, that's Dad's crazy sort of profession. We used to see him down the bottom of the driveway at 4 a.m, waiting for the newspapers. There didn't used to be iPads or phones, or so you had to wait for the physical newspapers to arrive. And he was in his dressing gown, very average-looking dressing gown, but he was waiting, and you knew it was going to be a stressful day. Like sometimes you'd watch him open it and read it, and I thought, wow, that's not for me. But at the core, I'd still observed, what could be done, and I went to Regent actually to be
This is Regent College, the theological college that you went to, and then full disclosure here, I mean, it's the reason I went there too. You used to rave about this place and say how awesome it was, and it sort of got me excited about it.
Yeah, no, it was an incredible place, but I went there on the understanding I was going to become a church minister, because part of that, I had a wrestle. I wanted to contribute, I wanted to make a difference, and I came after a long debate with Karen and a whole range of people and friends. And we got to the position, okay, we can see, church ministry, you can have an impact, so that's what we're going to do. But when I was there, I was very challenged. Well, you can impact in so many ways. You don't have to be a church minister. You can be anywhere. You can run an NGO, you can run a corporation, you can be in politics. And in that reflection, I started to think about actually, what I saw Dad had done in politics and the benefit and the impact you could have. So over that year, that's probably what turned my heart to politics.
And that's a whole massive story, how that happened. But you did do it for 10 years or so. You would think of it as you're saying, a sort of an attempt to contribute to the community. It's a complex, difficult battle though, isn't it? But at the end of it, when you look back on it, what did you think? Like, did you feel like, yeah, that was good, you're able to make a difference there?
I think when I finished, it was like, if anyone's been to Luna Park and been on the rotor, I think it's the rotor on high speed upside down, and you kind of stumble out of there dazed. Is the reality. I mean, look, you come out of politics damaged, and I was actually talking to Gladys this week about that everyone that goes into politics, but when I first walked into the Parliament, I remember the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, because I thought, I have this incredible privilege to advocate and lead and look after 60,000 constituents. And as I reflected on the motivation to go in, it was, how can I help them? What can I do in their schools and their hospitals and and youth homelessness? There were so many issues. And so for me, that's what it was about. And there's all types of different roles and responsibilities. But at the core, I remember when we secured funds for Bear Cottage, I said to Karen, which was a couple of years in, I think, into politics.
Just tell us what Bear Cottage is.
Bear Cottage is a young children's hospice, which is actually in Manly, and I was able to secure funds in opposition with the health minister at the time, who had a heart, Reba Ma, and when we got that money, I said to Karen, look, whatever happens, our time of politics has been worthwhile, because that I know that money will go to families who are, looking after terminally ill kids or kids with life-threatening illness, life-limiting illness, and what a pleasure that is. And there were many moments and events on it. And of course, there's ups and downs, and there are really terrible and difficult times. But as a package, notwithstanding coming out dazed, I felt an immense set of pride in terms of what was able to be achieved, but also thankfulness for the opportunity to serve.
And you came out alive, which was good.
Yeah,
Not everyone does. And so let's think about the way you both have made quite significant shifts in recent times. Now, Steve, you were into the corporate world. I think you worked for Qantas, didn't you? And then you were at Virgin. And now you've moved to a very different place in International Justice Mission. We've talked a bit about that before here on Life and Faith. But tell us about that organisation and what drew you to it.
Yeah, so I started with International Justice Mission in August, so it's fairly recent. But I got a text about the role from a friend, and look, at first I kind of hesitated, thinking I'm not sure this is for me. I had a great career at the airline, and a lot of good camaraderie there. But actually, Anne-Marie, my wife, said, no, the work they do is just fantastic, and they're not just sort of rescuing people held in slavery, but it's system change. So I looked into it more and more, and became a really irresistible opportunity, because I had no idea the extent of slavery in the world. And right now there is 40 million people, 10 million children who are being held in slavery. And International Justice Mission is, the world's largest anti-slavery organisation, who's got some really good solutions on what to do about that. So for me to take on that opportunity has been a great privilege.
Is it the sort of thing that gets you really excited to get to work each day? Like, how does it feel now as you do this work?
Yeah, it does, because I'd had a very good time in the corporate world on the whole, but there's always something niggling around what could I do to make a real difference. It's interesting, even yesterday I bumped into one of my former colleagues at a cafe who's moved on from Virgin, and I said to her, what are you going to do next? She said, I'm just thinking, how can I make a difference? And she's doing some volunteer work, for a women's shelter out west. But being able to sort of impact lives in such a meaningful way, it really does get you out of bed. So yeah, it's a real privilege.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a bit more about that in a moment. We'll turn to you, Mike. You've been in banking in a whole lot of different roles before and after politics. You're now the CEO of HammondCare, which provides aged care, dementia care, palliative care. Why that jump for you?
Similar to Steve, when I looked at HammondCare, I didn't know what I was going to do when I sort of left banking. There are so many different ways you can impact in a corporate. I mean, big corporations, they underestimate actually the power and the significance and the impact they can have. And I think that's a big debate for corporates. But I've probably got, one, maybe two executive roles left, and I really wanted to have an impact. And when I was sort of looking, I got a call on HammondCare. I had become aware of them, but that's all. And as I read their story, I mean, Bob Hammond, someone who was a minister of a church that saw a need, and that was in the middle of the Great Depression, many families who were homeless, not just looking at it, well, he cashed in his insurance like our super today, went out and bought land at Hammondville and built homes for the homeless with donated materials and volunteers. And that looking after those in need, which ultimately is what HammondCare is about, is something that I became really excited about, and it was something that grabbed me and I took the opportunity.
Now, you both recently lost your mum, who had a long battle with a degenerative disease. Mike, I wondered how much her illness might have played into that decision, because you'd had this experience and exposure to people in these positions, right?
It did, because it was formative, because I think that what I'd experienced over the years with Mum looking at the aged care, when we put her into a facility, it was heart-wrenching. And it's kind of the hands of the family, handing across Mum to other hands. And, this desperate hope that those hands would help her and care for her with a heart is one of the most traumatic things I think people and families can go through. And I've seen it. But what it showed me was how important it was. And, I've shared with my team at HammondCare, I just have this image, and it's actually the picture I used was the prodigal son, but it's in essence honed in on the image of these hands caring, and I reminded them that our hands are showing love and care every day in a way that shouldn't be taken for granted. It is a privilege, but it is impacting and changing people's lives, and having experienced it, there's nothing like that to get a sense on how important it is, and certainly that's what I've seen.
Dementia care is a massive thing these days, increasingly so. Aged care, it's very difficult. We know it's not always done well either. We've seen some awful stories coming out of the Royal Commission. What's your sense of that as you approach your work each day, knowing that it's a long way from perfect?
It's really hard. I mean, I think what I've seen, we've done some analysis that suggests there's about 100,000 people in Australia who have complex dementia who aren't being cared for in the way they should be. And that's kind of the motivation to our team. We have to do more. Like, we don't want to grow for growth's sake, but there's this unmet need and incredible capacity we have. In so many ways, it's so heartbreaking, but so wonderful. Because I see so many people trying to make that person across from us that's in our carers' hands, he or she is the whole world, and she matters. And I was on a shift with a nurse, and in the discussion, their behaviours were changing and becoming more challenging, and over a 2-hour period, I could see the care worker, looking at this resident, and I could see that, there were kind of tears welling in her eyes, and it was having an impact. And she's 19, beautiful young heart that she had for him, because she'd been by his side for many months and, wanted the best for him. And one of the elder care workers said to him, "Look, just remember, this is not him. This is behaviours." And constantly what we're looking at for who is there, who are they, what have they done, who are their family, who are their friends, what's their story, and reminding the community, he or she matters. And that is something in dementia care that I think is the key, reminding not just the community and the family and the friends, but the whole of Australia, that someone with dementia still matters in a deep way.
It's really interesting, because I know we'd all be hoping for someone like this to be looking after us if we get to that stage, wouldn't we? Isn't always like that. But you've seen some beautiful work done. I know you've sort of sat with people who are doing this work and been pretty impressed by it. There's a Christian sort of element to your organisation, and I'm wondering about this sort of the view of the human person and the way that informs the work, and how powerful that can be, do you think?
Well, that totally informs our motivation. If you reflect on Jesus' words in Matthew, when he's talking, he is saying, if you see someone who's hungry, feed them. If you see someone who's thirsty, give them something to drink. And that is what motivates us. As we reflect on those words, we see in front of us someone with need, and our opportunity and response is to meet and help that need.
This is Life and Faith, and we're talking to Mike and Steve Baird and hearing about their journeys from corporate world to the not-for-profit world and the work they're now doing. Mike for aged and dementia care provider HammondCare, and Steve for the anti-slavery organisation International Justice Mission. I asked Steve to give us a sense of what he loves most about working for IJM, and some stories about the difference that organisation makes.
Yeah, my first week I heard the story of Raja, who was 10 years old when his parents suddenly disappeared in India. And they ended up working at a brick factory, but what he didn't realise is they were going to pay his sister's wedding debts off. And they never came back. But it kind of touched me, because Raja had a younger brother and ended up the two of them riding a bike to school 5 kilometres each day. But he missed his parents so much after 6 months that he went and knocked on the factory door and said, "I want to come in." And then he was pulled into, slavery as well for the next couple of years. And he actually ended up spending, 2 years before as one of the first IJM rescue operations. He has gone on to become a lawyer himself. And he is now working with the IJM team, one of my colleagues in India, because he doesn't want any child to go through what he did. So, as someone who's principally lived in Australia and worked in Australia, to have international colleagues that I can converse with, like Raja, who are, righting wrongs and just wanting to change the world, is very inspiring.
It's pretty overwhelming. Both of you are in fields that could be pretty overwhelming. You could get a bit depressed about the scale of what you're up against. I think you're the same, Mike. How do you kind of avoid that kind of sense of despair when you're talking about these massive challenges?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good question, because there's no doubt that the challenges are big, but I think that what fuels me is just how effective the programs are and the impact that we're having in doing something about it. So, again, one month into sort of joining IJM, we had a farewell for one of our offices closing down, Chiang Mai in Thailand. And I thought it was a bit mixed emotions. I thought, why are we closing the office down? But they'd been there 20 years, and in the time they were there, sex trafficking of young children disappeared. So they'd done the job. Local authorities had it underhand. So that sense of, big problem, but something can be done about it. And right now in Chiang Mai, we don't need to be there. It's very satisfying.
That's fantastic, isn't it? You try to, if your work is really effective, you'd be all out of a role there.
Yeah.
That's probably not coming anytime soon, but what a great story of actual change being brought to bear.
Yeah, and that's our goal.
Probably not going to ever solve your problems, Mike.
Well, no, but it's similar. It's the stories, it's the people. I mean, even this morning I heard a story that's one of our facilities, an old gentleman, dishevelled, disorientated, sort of turned up and said, I need help. And, long story short, we found out that he was 800 metres from our residential care facility. He did have living with dementia, but he was in squalor and he was in a caravan, and it was just horrible. And he had no connections or no families. And my team, with their hearts, have brought him in. He's showering whenever he wants. He's got clean sheets on his bed. He's eating food whenever he wants. And he's telling them every day how appreciative he is of what we've done. I was at a palliative care facility earlier in the week, and I had this man say to me, coming here, I've had my tears of pain and frustration turned into tears of joy. And this is in his sort of last days. So I kind of think, those teams, just as examples of what sort of HammondCare is doing, well, yes, it's overwhelming, the challenges and the demands, but, that is what keeps you going. I mean, that sort of care.
Steve, you're facing in your organisation kind of a darkness here, like this very grim stuff, this sex trafficking and slavery and all this sort of stuff. There's a sort of spiritual darkness apparent there, don't you think? Is that something you're conscious of?
Well, this is a powerful industry that we're up against. They've actually valued what they think the slavery, business is worth. And globally, it's like $150 billion is generated through the slavery industry. So, that is the size and force at which we're up to. And a lot of this is happening in the shadows. And the fundamental thing we are fighting against is they estimate right now in the world that 5 billion people live outside the protection of the law. So, what these things can go on without consequence. And that's why a lot of our focus is on criminals need to fear consequence for holding people in slavery in a lot of these horrific crimes. So we work with local governments and authorities on how do we strengthen these justice systems, where is it that things could be improved so that there's more prosecutions. And we don't want to keep going and rescuing and restoring slaves. We don't want it to happen in the first place. So it's a big battle that we're up against, but we've seen it so effective in so many places.
Mike and Steve, you both, fair to say, grew up in a kind of privileged environment in Australia, had great loving families, and you've been given skills and education, all those sorts of things. Is that something when you reflect on that and you think, right, we've got a kind of obligation to give something back to the community? I'm going to guess you're going to say yes to that, but where does that come from, do you think? Like what's driving that kind of motivation?
I haven't actually reflected much on the upbringing. It's just kind of happened and thought. And you're right, we've had so many opportunities that so many people wouldn't, and that's something we shouldn't take for granted. But then, I think when we see our mum going and visiting prisoners, not just once through a Kairos mission, but ongoing, with the hope of connecting and looking for redemption in a life.
Yeah.
And when we see her become aware of orphans running around tips in Cairo, and not just sort of sending a donation because that deserves to be supported, but actually going to Cairo and connecting in with Mother Maggie who led that, and rolling her sleeves up to help.
Sure.
I think that sort of role modelling has made a difference, and Dad and standing up for what was right against incredible pressure in things like the refugees. No one will know the demands that he saw. I remember him coming back to the family after he'd been to all the detention centres in Australia, and he was ashen white. He said, "I have never seen such desperation." Mm-hmm. And that manifests itself into action, where he's faced potentially crossing the floor in Parliament. He's doesn't end up with a ministry when he would have, because he took a stand for them and for the many refugees. And so that package is probably put within us a desire and a context to help. So it's certainly part of the upbringing, but it may be sort of through the hearts and actions that we saw.
Now, Steve McKay talks about the fact that in his book, The Good Life, he kind of paints this picture of where satisfaction's to be found. Mm-hmm. And his sort of punchline is, look, it basically comes from, and this is all well researched, a life that's kind of led with other people's interests in mind. Takes me a long time to take that into my heart. But do you sense that yourself? Like, do you feel the motivation and the satisfaction from the work you're doing in this area and the change that it can actually make? Which is not just feathering your nest, it's trying to help others.
Yeah, I think that's true. And just to follow on from Mike's answer about what we'd been given, if I could speak as the sort of youngest and more quiet achiever in the family, what's actually been very gratifying for me as I've moved across to this CEO role at IJM is that there's a lot of small things that we learn and pick up day to day, which can seem relatively meaningless or inconsequential. But then you put in a context where, things like learning how to lead a big team or run a business or study a set of accounts or tell a story can actually have a really big impact. And I think what I hadn't appreciated is how a lot of these skills you quietly build up over the years can actually really make a difference. And sometimes thrusting ourselves into opportunities and places we couldn't imagine we were equipped for, we can be surprised by what we can achieve and how gratifying that can be.
That's lovely. Well, you're less a quiet achiever, Mike, much more public. But do you feel the same sort of things?
Well, I think it's all relative. I think there's, when I reflect on our family, I've said this a lot. I look at Steve for inspiration on many things. I think his heart and his dedication and commitment to people, his loyalty, his constant thinking of others has been anything other than quite achieving. It's been loud and impactful to those that have the eyes to see, and certainly I have. And it's interesting because Jules is obviously high profile as well. My dad was high profile, but Steve and Mum are probably the hearts of the operation that have kind of kept us together and inspired us in so many different ways. And public context, we'll talk about many things about public figures and what they've done and why it matters. I mean, I met many public figures in politics, but it was the people who had been in Meals on Wheels for 40 years that had the impact on me. The man that ran maintenance at the same school for 40 years and got a standing ovation from the school because of his impact on lives. And, you know, in our context, you know, we look at Steve in a way that is so proud. That decision he made to do IGAM from where he was heart-led, purpose-led, others-led. And, you know, to me, I think that's what's significant. You know, the loud public clanging, and there was a bit, you know, granted. There was a lot of constructive feedback at times.
Yes.
But, you know, a life well lived is a life well lived, and you can impact in so many ways. Some aren't public, some are, but the core of what matters is below that surface.
Well, as I said earlier, you lost your mum recently. The funeral was a credible testament to her doing exactly as you've described here. And she's obviously been a huge influence on you both. I'm sure she'd be enormously proud of you. Final thing, Steve, if you were to look over the desk at Mike, and I'm sure you're proud of him, but what do you wish for him? Like, what's the sorts of things you would hope for him, and likewise you for Steve?
I think what's good for me to see is just how much he's alive. Because, you know, we've spoken about Mum a lot in this, discussion now, but Mike is, like Mum in many ways, and I know he comes alive when he's got opportunities to get beside people and make a difference. And, you know, it was very special final 3 or 4 days we had with Mum, and especially being deep inside a nursing home, to see the way the nurses cared for her and us actually during that time. One of the, I guess, gratifying things of that is knowing that Mike can play such a central role in how that's set up for other families and seeing how much that brings him alive. So my hope is that he keeps finding things that bring him joy and life, and it's a great spot right now.
Mike, for Steve?
Well, I thought you were going to say, Steve, you hope I sort of get that 100. You know, I'm still searching for 100. We're playing.
You've got to be playing to
Well,
get
no, but we are. We're going
Coming
back.
back.
You know, this summer is the return. It's been about 26 years since, but we're back, and Steve's going to play a couple of games, and I think you're going to play a couple of games.
mate.
So.
Achilles might not.
50 would be a good starting point. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Like, actually, hitting into the middle would be a start. But a couple of things. When I look at Steve-O, I just see just a heart that can have a big impact on this country. And, you know, you talk about a quiet achiever. Steve's time in the public hasn't been there, but his heart has and his impact has. And if I roll forward 10 years, I can see Steve being one of the most significant leaders in the country in what he is advocating and what he is doing. Everything is built in for this point, and his care for others is contagious, and his capacity to bring a team together is phenomenal. So I think that Steve can do huge things sort of going ahead, and I also kind of reflect, you know, right now in terms of, you know, those last few days that we had with Mum. Jules, I and Steve were there right at the end, and we saw her pass, but in many respects, you know, she's still present with us, and I even right now reflect that if she was in this room, she'd be very proud. She'd be certainly the first one to listen to the podcast.
That's true.
Well, loved having you both in the Brothers Baird. It's been fun. Do it again sometime. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Money.
This has been Life and Faith with me, Simon Smart. Those organisations again, Mike Baird works at HammondCare. They provide aged care, dementia care and palliative care. And Steve Baird is at International Justice Mission, the largest anti-slavery organisation in the world. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please do share it with someone you know. Next week.
We live in an economy that's dynamic, that's in flux. We don't know what's going to make for security 30 years from now. Parents don't know. And, you know, this is like why my dad wanted us to be doctors, because he was stuck in that paradigm and he couldn't imagine that his children could be successful in any other way. None of us are doctors and we're all doing fine.